Well, welcome everyone to the weekly Newly Widowed Call. Tonight we have Julie Martella here to talk about thoughtful repurposing. Julie is a professional organizer, coach, an actual farmer, and an unintended widow. She lives in Central California on the farm alongside dogs, cats, an occasional stray human, a wayward child, and thousands of beautiful walnut trees. Taking on the role of widow was the most difficult and unwanted challenge of her life. The process of dealing with the stuff left with her with a deep desire to help men and women integrate their life before loss with a meaningful and lovely life they could experience after loss. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Julie.
Well, thank you. That was a beautiful intro. All right. My name is Julie Martella. It's not showing me, Rick. Is that okay? All right. Do you guys have me? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to go right here. All right. Can you guys see my screen okay? I just need a thumbs up. Or Rick, I
Yes.
need a nod from you.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
All right. All right. So today we're going to be talking about thoughtful repurposing. And thoughtful repurposing is a way to answer the question that says, what do I do with all this stuff? And I want you to know before we even begin today, I want you to know two things. Number one, this is one of the biggest problems that widowed people face. And number like right after like loneliness and I don't know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. These are the biggies. Okay. And number two, while I'm talking about what to do with all the stuff tonight, I want you to know that if you're not ready to do anything with the stuff, that's okay. I want you to keep that in your mind tonight. At some point, you're going to want to address what do I do with all the stuff? You may not be ready, and that's perfectly fine. Unless, this is what I tell clients, unless your stuff is creating a hazard or you have an external force, such as you have to move or you're selling your house or you're a renter, if there's an external force forcing you to go, or you have a health situation in which your stuff is making you a prisoner of your life, then you don't have to touch it. It's not going anywhere and it will wait for you. So I just want to start today. We're going to be talking about how to get rid of it, but I want you to know that it's your timeline. Okay. All right. So as Rick said, my name is Julie Martella. I'm a home strategist. I'm a podcaster, author, and speaker. I go through this part quickly because we don't need to know so much. But this is why I want you to know you should pay attention to what I have to say, is because I really dig organizing. I'm a member of the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, otherwise known as NAPO, and I hold 5 specialist certificates. And so what happened for me is I was not a naturally organized person. I had a brain injury and I could no longer do I couldn't organize things in my head. And so I had to learn how to organize externally. And I became very good at organizing. I like to look at how can we reconfigure and how can we think outside the box. So today, we are going to talk about one specific part of organizing, and that is called thoughtful repurposing. And thoughtful repurposing is the process of finding new and creative use for your possessions rather than disposing of them or letting them go to waste. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because your loved one left you, right? There are a lot of possessions that you need to address. And I want you to know there's a lot of things you can do with them. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Why do we want to consider thoughtful repurposing? Well, thoughtful repurposing allows your possessions to have new life. So instead of throwing it in the trash, you find a new home for it, and then your possession lives on. It lengthens, and having that new life lengthens the lifespan for the possession. It reduces landfill waste, which also supports sustainability. And it helps with this process called meaning making. And meaning making is a process in which our brain needs to come up with stories. So we have this arc of life. And in the arc of life, our brain is constantly creating a story to explain what's happening in our life. The loss of your person, the reason that you have widow's fog and you're so tired and you're so overwhelmed is that your brain is trying to come up with the story and it's struggling. Well, your brain does the same thing with the possessions. And when you can find a good home or a good story to go with getting rid of or letting go of a possession, having that story will actually bring you a sense of peace. So if you have a story, like if I have a coaster, I have a coaster here, I have one of my chicken coasters. If I just throw this in the trash, I'm not giving my brain a story. But if I find somebody who loves chickens and I give her my whole set of chicken coasters, I have made a story that makes getting rid of that easier, right? It just makes it easier. So meaning making, never underestimate the power of the story for your brain. All right. The first thing, if you're going to thoughtfully repurpose or downsize or clean out your house, you need to ask yourself, do you have time? And not only do you have time, but what kind of time do you have? Because if you have time, thoughtful repurposing is a great solution. However, if you don't have time, it's going to force you, you can still do it, but you're going to have to be laser focused and you're going to need to think outside the box. Time buys us choices, my friends. The more time you have, the more choices you get to have. So compressing the time, it doesn't necessarily take our choices away, but we have to be very efficient in how we make our choices. And I think that that's one thing that you need to know today too, is that when you sit down to begin your thoughtful repurposing project or your decluttering or downsizing, whatever it is, you're going to have, your brain's going to give you, I've noticed about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours is your window of time. So guard that time. If people want to stop by and talk, you need to tell them like, hey, I would love to talk in 2 hours, because your brain is going to get tired. And we'll talk about that later. But anyway, ask yourself, how much time do I have? And if I don't have a lot of time, how can I be laser focused? The guiding question as you go through your loved one's things is to ask yourself, who else could benefit from these possessions? Who else would appreciate them and love them? Who else might need them? Okay. Now, how to thoughtfully repurpose. There are 5 ways. And I noticed at the top, I wrote TP for purpose instead of repurpose. That was my brain right there. But there are 5 ways to thoughtfully repurpose. You can upcycle, recycle, repurpose. There's a process called donations and gift giving. And then there's something called legacy creation. We're going to go through each one of these tonight. And at the end, if you have a question, my friends, please write it on a Post-it note or a piece of paper. Like I've got a little notebook here. At the end, I will take as many of your questions as possible. All right, upcycling, first one. Upcycling is transforming an item into something of higher value or quality. So, for example, we have a ladder. We took the ladder, we brought it in the house, we put some blankets on it, we hung some plants from it. We have upcycled that ladder into a little piece of art or into a blanket holder. So you may have possessions when you go through your home, you may find that you have possessions that you think, I don't like that. I don't like that as a ladder, but I can use that for something else. So that is one way to thoughtfully repurpose. The next thing you can do is recycling. Most of us know recycling as getting rid of our plastics or our tin cans or our newspapers, but recycling is really responsibly disposing of any unwanted or unused items. Usually these items will come, if you're going through your loved one's things, if you find a pile of old magazines, that may be an easy, hey, I need to recycle this, right? Some of them are no-brainers, but there are a lot of things that can be recycled that we don't think about. Sometimes people can use them for a different purpose, which is also called repurposing, but other times we cannot really use them anymore. So things like old TVs, old computers, old electronics, old paint, old any cleaning chemicals, those types of things you want to recycle, and you want to recycle using proper, like it's called e-waste or chem waste. So when you're going through the recycling process, ask yourself, how do I need to responsibly get rid of this? Because what happens is if you go throw it in your dumpster, then the chemicals that are, or in the chemical components that are, say, in the TV, those go into a landfill, and then those chemicals break down and then they contaminate things, which is why we want to remember, where do I need to take this so that it can be properly disposed of? So that is recycling. The next item that you can do is called repurposing. And repurposing is kind of a level. So upcycling was making something better. Repurposing is taking an item and using it for a different purpose. So for example, you could stack some old suitcases up and you make them an end table. I have a friend who took her old suitcases and she put the grandkids' toys in them. And then she stacked them up. And when the kids would come over, they would take out grandma's suitcases, open them up, have a good time. In the picture, I have done this in my house, take an old steamer trunk. I took an old steamer trunk, I made it an end table. It no longer serves a purpose as a steamer trunk, but I found a new use for it. So you may have possessions in your home that don't work for their intended purpose, but if you think outside the box, you may find a wonderful new purpose for them. The next thing that you can do is called donations and gift giving. So here's the difference. There's a difference between the two. Both of them involve you passing your items on to another person, place, or organization, okay? Both of them are a win-win situation because number one, you get rid of your stuff, and number two, they get something. The difference is when you are donating something, you may know the person that you're giving it to. So we had a gentleman, I do this class every session or many sessions. We had a gentleman in one class, his wife had a beautiful jewelry collection and he had boys, and he said, what am I going to do with this jewelry? I don't want to take it down to the pawn shop. This was special jewelry. So we brainstormed and we talked about it, and he had talked about, what if he called his wife's best friends and asked them to come over and take some jewelry? He wins. He was able to downsize the collection, and they won because they received a piece of their best friend. And every time they look at the jewelry and they wear the jewelry, they're happy. They feel they love, they have that connection again. So in donations and gifting, you might have the situation where you know the person receiving what you are getting rid of. However, sometimes you also need to think about, if you're gifting something, you may not know who's getting your stuff. And I tell you that because you want to make sure that you're okay with that. If you decide to call a thrift store, there are many thrift stores that will come out to your house. If you call them, you can leave your stuff at the curb. They'll come out and pick it up. Okay, that's a win for you because you got rid of your stuff. It's a win for them because they got stuff, but you are not going to know who received your wife's dresses or who received your husband's pants. You're not going to know. So you want to make sure when you're thinking about getting rid of stuff, you want to ask yourself, sports collections, same thing. Some people care, some people don't. You want to ask yourself, do I need to know who gets my husband or wife's or partner's things? And so that's something to keep in mind when you do donations or gifting. And then the last thing that you can do is called legacy creation. And legacy creation is not for all of your things, but legacy creation is kind of a nice way to make the brain happy. And what you do is you create keepsakes and mementos from your loved ones' belongings. And in our Newly Widowed Village group and at Camp Widow, I have heard so many people talk about beautiful things that they have made from their loved ones' belongings, including this amazing tie quilt, right? Someone took all of her husband's ties and she made him a quilt. There are people that have made t-shirts or button-down shirts into aprons, into teddy bears, into pillows. You can create art projects. You can create a legacy box. You can create pieces of jewelry. How many of you are wondering, what do I do with the ring? One of the things you can do, you can make it into a piece of jewelry, whether it's a necklace, whether you have it reworked. Legacy creation is a way to keep your person with you in a new and unique way. And it's really kind of fun. Like I said, not everything is good for legacy creation, but if you find an interesting collection of something, you might ask yourself, what else could I do with this? If you have fabric, there's a ton of things to do. Now, I want to give you 3 cautions, and we'll talk about these as we go through. Number 1, there are sentimental items that will stop you in your tracks and it will derail your project. Some of your items need time out, and children need special consideration. If you are a widowed person with young children, you have to think for your children and you need to ask yourself, what might they need? Okay, because they're not old enough. They're not old enough to make that decision. So handling the sentimental items, I want you to trust your instincts and I want you to make choices that feel thoughtful and meaningful and authentic to you. You don't have to get rid of everything. Some people are going to come into your life. You're going to have 2 people that come into your life, 2 ends of the spectrum. You're going to have some people that say, don't get rid of anything, because there's this fear that if you get rid of the possession, you're going to lose the memory. And that's a thought error, right? Me getting rid of the chicken coaster, I'm not going to get rid of the memory. I will always have the memory. The physical manifestation is gone, but the memory remains. And then on the other side of the spectrum is you have people who will say, got it, get rid of everything, fresh start. And so then if you listen to those people, you're getting rushed and you're going through things too fast. And I don't know if any of you have had that experience. I have a gentleman that his daughter-in-law and granddaughter came over because they decided it was time to go through grandma's closet. And he felt horrible because he wasn't ready. They were ready, but he wasn't ready. So when you come across sentimental items, the way you'll know it's a sentimental item is because all of a sudden everything will stop and you'll go, oh, wow. Oh my gosh, she kept every report card I ever gave her. I have to stop. I have to stop and look through them. That's your clue, because sentimental items stop you in your tracks. So one of the things that you can do is you can put your things in time out. This is one of my favorite strategies, friends. This is what I want you to do. If you come across that sentimental item and you know, I've got 2 hours of work time and I have to get this project done, right? Whether it's just the kitchen table, whether it's a set of drawers, whether it's the kitchen cabinets, if there's an area you need to get done, you come across a sentimental item, then what I want you to do is I want you to put it in timeout. And timeout allows you to put some of the sentimental items into a holding pattern. So you're not saying goodbye, right? You're not saying you have to go, and you're not saying you can stay. What you're saying is, I don't know what to do with you right now. And timeout area. So for example, there's a chair. I chair my timeout area while I'm cleaning. So if I come across something like, oh, I don't know what to do, I go like this. Okay, you're in timeout. I'm going to keep going. And that is how you keep your project going. Now, at the end of the project, you're going to go back, you're going to go and you're going to say, all right, what did I collect here in timeout? And then you're going to look at the things. And if you look at something and you go, I don't need that. Okay, get rid of it. But if you look at something and you're still stuck because it's sentimental, then what you're going to do is you're going to get a box. And on that box, you're going to write timeout, and then you're going to write the date. And without you're not going to worry about, there's no judging. There's no like, I'm a bad person, I should be able to do this. You're just going to put your stuff in the box, put the box in a safe place, whether it's on top of in the closet, out in in my case, out in the barn, in the garage. You're going to put it in a safe place. You're going to put a date on it. You're going to put a reminder on your calendar in 3 months or 6 months. And when that reminder goes off, then you're going to go get that timeout box out. And you're going to look at what's in the timeout box, because what you will discover is that many of the items that you thought were so important and you couldn't live without, you just needed a little space from them. And then they're easier to let go of. So timeout is the thing. All right, children, the last thing we're going to talk about. If you have children or grandchildren, and I consider children anyone under the age of 25, Rachel Kodenatz, I think, said anyone under the age of 30. They're not thinking yet. They have something called a prefrontal cortex, the PFC, and they're not of rational thinking age before this age. And so they need you to put things back for them. And when you're putting things back and when you're considering what do I need to let go of, I want you to consider future milestones. So for example, maybe you have a son who's going to go to a dance or a graduation. He's going to need a tie. Maybe you save a tie of dad's for a special occasion. Maybe you save a piece of jewelry for a special occasion. Maybe you have a daughter and you think, someday she might get married. I'm going to put this mom's watch back so that when she gets married. Maybe dad was a fisherman or a sports collector, right? We don't have to keep all of the sports paraphernalia, but you might want to put aside, this was dad's favorite, these were his favorite set of collectible race cars. So I'm going to save his 5 favorite cars and I'm going to let the other 25 go. So that's how you start thinking about your children. You, my friends, are not done. You are not finished. Your future is not fixed. You are not set. You are a bundle of possibility currently wrapped up in grief. And I want to leave you with that thought when it's hard to think, when it's hard to do things. You are okay. This is very normal. It will get better, right? Your future is not fixed. This is not how the rest of your life is going to be. And going through your possessions is a very powerful way to say goodbye to your loved one. It's saying goodbye to your loved one in the physical world. There's a book there. I do have a book that talks about all this. If you are interested, that is the book. All right, so I am going to stop sharing. And we, Rick, are going to do whatever, take as many questions as we can. You're muted.
Muted. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. See, my brain's not working either.